Never mind. I got it. I got it. Okay, cool.
Can the lady in the back get like 15 rows up?
15.
I think it's, yeah, I'm pretty sure. Sorry, don't mean to make you uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's a microphone right there for you, actually.
All right. Thanks, guys.
That's okay. Sorry, Bo, I interrupted
On
you.
camera, there's this thing, there's this framing thing about a camera. If you're not in front of it, we can't see you.
I forgot my adapter for my camera, so
Okay,
that's
so
my bad.
Kurt, we need you to come this way. Kurt, we need you to come this way, buddy. There's a gal in like the third row. We need to come that way. Yeah, you. The waiver. Sit next to Tom. He's not that bad. Well, he is that bad. Okay, and the lady that just sat in the front row. If you
we're good, Wayne. We're good. It's fine.
We're trying to frame this so we can see.
Wayne's directing this.
This is the natural director in me. You know, it's like, no, we got to move this way and that way.
Sorry, Bowen.
No problem.
As you were saying,
I always enjoy a good long-winded introduction, but so I guess just starting over. So hello, everyone. My name is Bowen Browder, and I am currently an aspiring actor based in the Klamath Falls area. I'm actually a Klamath Falls native. I've grown up here, graduated high school here. I also went to college here. I'm an alum of Oregon Tech. I graduated last year with a degree in communication studies, and I'm now currently working there as an admissions counselor. But in my off time, I'm very invested in being a participant in Klamath Film, helping with the events here, being an active member of the board, but also helping along with any sort of film or filmmaking opportunities around the basin. I'm currently in production for a film right now. I'm working on submitting for some other ones as well. But just throughout the whole process, I've always been a lifelong lover of storytelling in all its forms. So very happy to be here.
Thank you.
I reckon I'm next. Tom Cooley here. I'm a writer, director, been doing films since the mid 60s. Started when I was a kid, teenager actually, but you know what the heck. It's something I've done all my life. My father got me into it because he worked in the studios, and I just can't get it out of my blood. And I don't want it out of my blood. It's as simple as that. And I got a possible film coming up, going to shoot in Florida in October if we get it all together with Mo Capture called Out of Order, and it's a comedy about the devil. Should be a lot of fun. Anyway, I'm going to hand this over to
Denise Gabriel. Hi, everybody. I'm finally in town.
yeah, we've only been seeing you virtually for a long time.
Yeah, so I'm normally wherever we're filming. So I am an associate producer with MSR Media. We've got multiple films in production in England and the Caribbean at the moment, and we're bringing some back with us finally. Yeah, I was in the Caribbean all of last year down in St. Kitts and Nevis. So
Darn, if you're gonna sit through a pandemic being forced at home, I guess being in St. Kitts
yeah,
would
being on
be.
an island surrounded by water with no pandemic at all and going sport fishing was absolutely horrendous. So yeah, so spent many years in LA, and I've been working for this company, well, consulting with them really technically for 17 years now, and I write, produce all kinds. So but family's here, and I grew up here, so I'm between LA, Portland here, and wherever we're filming normally. Looks like it will be some in Puerto Rico maybe later this year. So it's good to be able to
Want my phone number?
say hi locally again for a change.
Yeah, terrific. I barely recognized you when you walked in. I'm like, I swear I know her, but it's been so
I've been a
long.
member of the Cannabis Filmmakers Group for many years, since it started really with Jesse and them, but I'm usually just never here.
Right.
so it's good to be home.
And since Denise is our featured guest, we'll jump online. Wayne, hello, sir. Introduce yourself, please.
Oh, I.
Yeah.
I'm Wayne. Wayne Sweat. I'm an actor. I've produced, directed, been DP, just done it all. You know how it is. Primarily, let's see, plays, other stage performances, commercial.
Oh, Wayne, you froze.
Shorts, student films, feature film. Am I running out of time?
No, it's fine.
Currently thanking God that the COVID is not stopping things from happening again. I mean, back in 2020, the first week of 2020, I was associated with 6 projects. The 7th day of 8th day, whatever, 2020 was 7 different projects, and they all but one stopped. I mean, we shot one trailer for a web series. Just got a call the other day from the producer. We're going to get that going again. Thanking God for that. I went from what's it called? A supporting role to the featured male player. Just we're in the process with Mr. Bowen Browder of shooting another short, but associated with like 7 or 8 different films being written in different parts, casting for parts, talked to or chatted with a filmmaker that I'm a big fan of the other day, and he's writing a role in for me for another role, another feature film that he's doing, and he's been successful in some other features, and just thrilled to see things going. It was, when everything stopped, it was like you're having sex and just loving it, and now it's like, oh my gosh, she called me back. Oh, my internet connection is unavailable.
We're picking up bits and pieces from you. So
anyhow, pleasure to be with y'all.
yeah, thanks, Wayne.
And Dom in particular, we're going to do another 5 or 10 or 20 different projects together. Yeah.
Court, our fearless leader. Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Court. I'm a current exec and former board vice chair. My path into film was largely through music. I was a session musician and became like an arranger and orchestrator and composer for films. 10 years after that, started a film company for 5 years, made scientific and technical films. Came here about 4 years ago, and been really enjoying working with Klamath Film, and everybody's great, and all the possibilities are endless with that. I'm mostly doing administrative stuff these days. I do have a couple of partners that I work with, and we're doing some stuff with a 3D project that one of them is doing with Unreal Engine and stuff like that. And I'm working on that when I have a little time. That's it.
Terrific. Mary Jane. Hello again, Mary Jane. Introduce yourself, please. No, that's Cassidy. Mary Jane, are you there?
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, hi. Well, I'm Mary Jane, and I love film, and I always have time for a good one. I also am a writer. I've written various things. In particular, I have 2 shorts that I've written, and someday maybe I will gain a few filmmaking skills. I don't know, or maybe I'll find someone that would be interested in making them. I'm also a photographer. I love the coast. We spend a lot of time in Brookings. I take a lot of pictures of the sea, and actually post them on Facebook, a lot of them. I have published 2 books. one called The Greatest and one A Mixed Bag. Both deal with overcoming adversity and other things. More on the joyful side, maybe, in my book of poems. And they both are on Amazon or on my website called Creations by Jesus and Me. It has a link to both of them. And I don't know, I just enjoy being part of Klamath Film. I learn something new each time I come to a meeting. And so that's me.
Thank you, Mary Jane. Cassidy Quiscorp is on the call, but she said her mic isn't working in the chat room. But Cassidy is our assistant executive director. She's also a filmmaker, works with, is it BLM or ODFW or something like that? Cassie, put it in the chat for where you work, but wants to be an environmental documentary filmmaker. The BLM, yeah. So her day job is with BLM, and when she's not doing BLM stuff, she's doing Klamath Film things. So thank you, Cassie, for being here. And we have a former featured guest that's joining us. Hey, Taylor, what's up, man? Good to see you. And soon enough, we'll get to see you in person. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Taylor. Morton, it's nice to see you all. I just wanted to pop in. I like these meetings. They're super fun, and you never know what you're going to hear. I'm a filmmaker. I've made some movies, mostly documentaries, some narrative shorts. Played at the Klamath Film Festival several times, and it's one of my favorites. So I keep popping back into these things to see what's new. Gesundheit. That's it. I won a spelling bee in the 3rd grade. I don't know I don't know how deep these intros go. I also like to cook.
I love the background, by the way. That is very, very cool.
Thanks. That's my office.
Excellent accomplishment in my book.
And Denise here, our featured guest. Why don't you introduce yourself? And then we'll get more into your story later. But if you want to just introduce yourself.
My name is Denise Stillwell. I grew up primarily in Klamath. I went to school at Lost River, finished at Henley, left, went to USC, and spent last 30 years in LA, and came home about 3 years ago, right before the pandemic, when Disney bought 20th Century Fox. So that's where I was last working. That is me, so I'll tell more, I guess.
Yeah, we'll get more into your background and some of the things you got to
So
work
your
on.
last name is Stillwell, and you.
And you
I probably went to school with some family members of yours.
And who? Say that again.
You're gonna have to repeat that because we got your name is Stillwell and
Yeah, I thought I heard the name Stillwell.
Yes.
And I'm thinking that I probably went to school with some people that you
You probably have.
That's very cool. That's very cool. I feel special.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for being here. Denise is our featured guest. We'll get to know about what she did in the film industry, TV film industry for many years, and any other topics that we want to touch on tonight. But before we delve into a couple of announcements, anyone want to have any projects that they're working on or any announcements they want to make? Or
Bowen.
Yeah, Bowen.
Bueller. Sorry. Well, do you have something you would like to announce? Or
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, at the moment, nothing in particular, unless it's referring to the project that you and I are both in. But as for now, that's like the one that we're working on is the one that I'm currently actively in. But outside of that, there are some other projects that I'm like thinking about submitting to. Another thing there, but nothing to announce just yet.
Submit to it, and it's better to turn it down than to get turned down. So submit to whatever you can, buddy.
Oh yeah, of course. But yeah, as for that, nothing directly, unless you guys wanted me to talk about like Oregon Tech admissions events, but that probably isn't really fun to talk about. Yeah.
Court.
Well,
There's something that you and I are working on.
Okay.
It was discussed during a previous meeting that I was not a friend. Can we talk about it now?
Sure. Wayne and I have a project we want to put on our YouTube channel, and we're in post-production on a pilot for that. Gist of it is, I wanted to take kind of the best of what we do at the member meetings because the guest speakers are so popular, that segment. So we decided to make a little interview show where we would just talk with people about the nuts and bolts of the industry, of storytelling, structure, maybe cinematography, all these different things. So we did a pilot with a fellow I knew was both an actor and a script doctor. And we did that last week or week before. And so that's in post. I guess we've tentatively titled the show Wayne's Word.
Like that.
So I think a better name would have been Cold Sweat, but so yeah, we are working on that. Also, of course, Klamath Film's got a lot going on in May. We've got Frank and Zed coming on the 14th out at Oregon Tech. We've got a Memorial Day show, which we'll start promoting next week. That's going to be on the 29th at the Ross Raglan. We're also doing, we're going to be a presence at the Klamath Job Fair. We're going to be, I'm giving a presentation for the disabled American vets next week. We have a lot of things going on. May's a busy month for us. And if you're part of the business community, come on down, because on the 26th, we're gonna host a wake at 8-ish at Gaucho Collective.
Yep. And I see we have another Eugene filmmaker that popped in. Hey, Jarrett, what's up, man? Go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hey, Kurt, how are you? My name is Jarrett Bryant, part of the Lane film community here in Eugene, Oregon. And thanks for inviting me, and thanks. I appreciate being a part of your group.
Thank you. Jarrett last year was the winner of our best feature film at Klamath Independent Film Festival. He made a film called Maxie, which you just had a red carpet screening, right?
Yes, we just opened at the Broadway Metro on the 29th of April, and we just got extended for another week, and it's going very well. Very well.
Very good. That's fantastic. And I know, Taylor, you're in pre-production for your next documentary, right?
Hey,
I'm
Taylor.
in production on one, and I'm attached and pitching 4 or 5 more.
Okay. Yeah,
But I'm in
because
the middle of production on one. I got COVID during production in St.
Oh,
Louis.
no.
It set us back about a month. So we were supposed to be done with principal, but instead I start back up right after the Comic-Con thing. I'm going down to LA to wrap it up.
Nice. Yeah, I saw it showed up in, what was it, E! Or Hollywood Reporter or something about your current project. You want to talk about it a little bit, the Build-A-Bear project?
Sure, it's a Build-A-Bear project. I have it, it's on Post-it notes. That's what the movie is. That's the movie. It's a documentary about Build-A-Bear.
Have you confirmed platforms that it's going to be on yet, or is that still TBD?
No, we're making it, and then we're going to try to sell it as a finished thing.
Okay.
So everything else I'm attached to, we're pitching for funding up front, and we'll know where they're landing. But this one is, I don't know if we're supposed to talk about it, but it's funded by Build-A-Bear. So it's not like a super impartial documentary. I will be saying very few bad things about teddy bears in it. But that means we had a budget and we could just make it.
Nice. Well,
So, Tom, Mr. Cooley, we've done a number of projects in the past. Is there anything that you could talk about that we might be doing in the future?
Well, I've got one called Split Decision I'm working on. It only takes 2 people in front of the camera and about 8 to 10 people voiceovers on the back. It's kind of an interesting morals story. That should be interesting. What else have I got? I got one called The Circle, but that's a medieval thing. I need to start looking into that and getting the armor and the sets, and I need a bog. Where do you find bogs?
Well, if it keeps raining the way that it has, there's really not much of an issue.
I mentioned the fact that I'm working on a film that looks like it might get produced out of Florida called Out of Order. I think, did I mention that?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought I
Yep.
did. What else? And then I've got one called
You
Journal.
are a prolific filmmaker, and
Well, I wish I
somebody
could-
I'd love to play with.
You know, I need to talk with certain people more often.
Well, I do have a couple of quick announcements and then we'll get to our guest. But hey, one of the announcements involves one of the people on the call right now. So first of all, let me see here. Let's see here. So Nick Alexander's going to start filming his project that Bowen and Wayne are both attached to this weekend, right? His first day of filming. So that's fantastic. So we have a local short film being shot here. Gary Lundgren, who a lot of people know around here, he's based in Ashland, filmmaker. He shot the film Phoenix, Oregon here in Klamath, which infamously ended up the #1 movie in America through the flukiest of circumstances, being released the week that every theater in the country was shut down. But they had an online release, so it's also goes down in history as the lowest grossing #1 film in history. By default, it was the only film in the country that registered box office numbers for that first week in March when all hell broke loose. Anyway, he's working on his next.
I had a nice chat with him.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gary's working on his next film, and he wants to shoot locally, and so he's looking for.
Oh, are you kidding me? I talked to him about that.
So well, by
shooting Klamath.
Well, no, by locally I mean Southern Oregon.
Oh, good.
So
yeah, I recommended the Klamath Film Group that had a portfolio of places to shoot.
He may still do some filming in Klamath. He may do it in Medford and Ashland. I think he's still determining locations, but he is looking for cast and crew right now. So if for our Southern Oregon folks, reach out to Gary if you know, or I can connect you to him. If you want more details on that. Additionally, hey, there's Taylor's film. So Taylor is coming down here a week from today. He's going to be actually in this room where we're at now, showing one of his earlier films that we screened at the 2019 Klamath Independent Film Festival. It's a documentary about the history of ska music. And it has just about every ska band you could possibly name appearing in the film. The soundtrack is incredible. I love this film. And Taylor was kind enough to say that he'd come down a day early. Yeah, there it is right there. To show this film. And since the Retro Room has this amazing little quaint old back theater, I thought the night before Klamath Comic-Con, we could show the film, have Taylor hang out. I don't know if you still have any soundtracks left or posters or stickers, anything you can bring. And then Taylor is also going to be a featured speaker at Comic-Con on Friday the 13th. So here, Thursday, May 12th, 6 p.m., Taylor, barring traffic, will be here. so that we can show his film to the crowd and hang out at the reg store for a bit. So thank you, Taylor, for doing that. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. It sounds fun. I like record stores.
Anything further you want to say about your movie, Pick It Up, Ska?
I mean, I like it. If you like music documentaries, you'll probably like it too. Other people like it.
To someone who's a little bit uninitiated, how would you describe ska music?
Ooh, the film goes into that in detail.
Yeah, for people uninitiated, I recommend you watch my documentary. We made it as a primer for people because we got sick of answering that question. Like me and my ska friends.
Sorry.
No. I get it. It's like when people try to describe different types of electronic music to me, and I don't know the difference between house and trap and dubstep and whatever.
For a while, I thought it was a specific band, but it's actually more of a genre.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So you know reggae music, right?
Yes.
Ska was actually the predecessor to reggae music.
Oh,
in
gotcha.
Jamaica, and then it got amalgamated in England, and then it came to the US.
So it's
it
been
kinda
through.
got melded with like punk rock and other things. So it's kind of like splits of ska music.
It's been through quite the boiler pot of culture.
Yes.
Okay.
Bob Marley was originally a ska artist before he was a reggae artist.
Okay. Fair enough.
Kurt, you're giving away the whole movie, man.
Now we don't gotta go watch it.
And we're gonna.
The soundtrack on it is amazing. I have it on vinyl, but I'm sure that's sold out. But you still have some copies on CD you can bring?
We actually weren't allowed to make CDs. It was a super limited run thing. So it's vinyl only. I might have 2 or 3 copies left I can bring down. I got to dig in the garage before I go.
Well, and if you have any posters and stickers, feel free to bring them down.
I got all that stuff.
Okay, great. So we'll be screening Taylor's film here in this room, totally free. I'm even bringing a popcorn machine for it, so stop on in. And then, come on.
Yeah, get rid of that slide, man. It's too bright. Too many colors.
There we go.
Yay, less colors.
So Comic-Con is this week. I've been working on it for about 3 months now. KCC is holding its first Comic-Con Friday, May 13th from 3 to 8. Taylor will be one of our featured guests. We also have Jesse Blanchard coming, who is also a filmmaker. Peter Tirius is going to be joining us, who is an animator. He's worked with Pixar, LucasArts. He's done video games, and he's also the author of a Mecha Samurai anime book series. And our featured keynotes at the end of the night are Patrick Casey and Josh Miller, the screenwriters of the Sonic the Hedgehog movies. So that should be super fun. Come on out. We've got a bunch of stuff going on. We've got about 40 vendors lined up for it. Flight sims, video games, board games, all sorts of stuff.
Mac McEwen, who's a local entrepreneur here, has from the original molds from the movie The Thing, the one with Kurt Russell, the man who splits in half, and the spider head. I'm pretty sure we're going to bring that down.
We will definitely have some haunted house stuff. And Frankincense, which I have a poster of right here, and posters around. We are finally getting to show Frankincense. Oh, first of all, here's more of a schedule breakdown. I'm sorry for the people in the house, that's a little small. General schedule and our speakers. There's Taylor right there from 4 to 4:30 on our main stage. Jesse Blanchard will follow him. Jesse's going to come down from Portland. He's a filmmaker and professional puppeteer. And we were supposed to be the world premiere of his film in 2020. Actually, I can jump to that. First, there's a map of campus. In case you're curious of where to go to building 4 first. And the main stage will be in building 4, but there'll be different stations all around campus of the different things that we're doing. When you first get there, we'll give you a map. And then we're giving away a bunch of prizes. So come in costume if you want to. We're doing a free cosplay costume contest. We're giving away an Oculus, a bunch of gaming gear, some gift cards, and for little kids, a Sonic the Hedgehog Lego set. And now Frankincense. So Frankincense is this absolutely crazy, insane, hilarious, scary puppet movie that took 7 years to make in a garage in Portland by a guy named Jesse Blanchard. And we were supposed to be the world premiere of it at the 2020 Klamath Independent Film Festival. And then about 2 weeks before the festival, he got offered the possibility, not the confirmation, but the possibility that he could world premiere South by Southwest. Klamath, South by, what are you going to do? So he pulled the film on the offhand chance he could get in. Of course, he didn't get into South by. And he's only shown it at a handful of horror film festivals. It's not on any streaming service. It's not on DVDs or Blu-rays. Because for the last 2 years, he's been going through the other process that our filmmakers know all too well is once you have a film in the can, then you need to go out and try to sell it. And sometimes that can be a very lengthy and difficult process to find a buyer for your film. So very few people have seen this film, but those who have, you go online, there's all these people raving about this unbelievable film that's like nothing else you've ever seen. It's really a grand homage to the universal horror films of the 30s and 40s, like The Mummy and Frankenstein and Dracula and all that. So it's a buddy comedy with between a Frankenstein and a zombie that are out terrorizing the villagers. So it's kind of like Young Frankenstein in that respect. It's also a comedy that's kind of spoofing that stuff, but also loving tribute, but done entirely with puppets. So if you combined Young Frankenstein with the Dark Crystal, you'd get a sense of what this movie is. It's absolutely crazy. And the screening in Klamath is probably going to be the last time anyone gets to see this film for a long, long time. So Jesse's coming down to be a part of Comic-Con. He'll be one of our speakers, and he's going to lead a puppetry workshop. So if anyone wants to learn how to build their own puppet, he'll lead a workshop from 3 to 5 and then be a guest on stage. And then the following night, Saturday, May 14th at Oregon Tech's Auditorium, we're going to do a screening. I have some tickets here. If anyone wants them, they're $5 for Klamath Film members or $10 otherwise. But this gets however many thumbs I can put up. It's an amazing film. Please come check it out if you can. Then I've also started hosting music trivia nights here in this same room once a month. With the prize being $50 in store credit. So if you think you know music, come on out. It's a whole multimedia thing that we do. We had tons of fun last month when we did it. So once a month, I'll be doing that. Next one's May 21st, 6 p.m. And beyond that, I wanted to welcome in our official guests. And the other thing too is May 29th, Memorial Day. Sorry. May 29th, we will be doing a Memorial Day screening, but we haven't determined what film yet, right, Court?
Oh, we got the film.
Oh, okay. Can we announce what film we're showing then?
Yeah, we're doing Francis Ford Coppola's Gardens of Stone with James Caan, James Earl Jones, Angelica Houston.
Okay. Where and when?
I met James.
That's Sunday, May 29th at the Ross Ragland Theater at 1 p.m.
Okay, great. So, and that's something we want to do every year is a Memorial Day or Veterans Day screening. We do certain, in addition to the film festival, we do select screenings throughout the year. We show Oscar shorts before the Academy Awards every year, stuff like that. So we'll start our Memorial Day tradition this year. So beyond that,
it's funny. I'm James Caan on the movie Wild, and I wasn't expecting him to be there. And it's like he remarkably like James Caan, and he just had this silly little smile on his face, and it's like that's when I ran away like a little kid. Nice guy though, nice guy.
Cool. Well, with that, I want to, unless there's anything else that we need to discuss before we get into our core discussion, I want to welcome our featured guest tonight, Denise Stillwell. Denise worked for Fox Studios for many years, in addition to other roles in Hollywood, has quite a story to tell with all the different things. With these, we keep it very free form and casual. So if you just want to tell us some of the things that you worked on, and then if anyone has a question or there's a topic that you want to touch base on, we have multiple filmmakers here that would love insight, I'm sure, on your side of how the studio system works, because we all know the process of filmmaking but how do we connect our films to the studios and gain interest? So I'm sure people would love to hear your perspective on that.
Okay.
Yes, we are all ears.
Oh, lovely. It's interesting. I'll start at the very beginning and then very quickly go through it, just because unlike you guys, and I think this is kind of unique, I grew up by Lost River, Maryland, Lynn, very small town. We had 2 channels for television, that's all. And we went to a lot of movies, but I didn't know that that was an industry you could work in. So I went to USC. I wanted to travel. There was a little ad in the paper. And so it talked about traveling, and that is how I got into live entertainment. Was my first job that was bought out by Artisan, but it was just because of the traveling. And so I went in there as collections and finance person, and I ended up, they couldn't keep a lawyer. They were making about 10 to 12 movies a year, and they had a library about 3,000 films. I didn't know anything about entertainment. And so I was the collections person, I was the marketing person, and then I became the in-house lawyer. because they did not pay the lawyer anything for their international, and I think their international department was about 10 of us. And the whole studio at that time was about
Person,
90.
were you the person that they, as the collections person, were you
Yep.
the person they said, if you don't pay, we're sending Bubba after you?
Luckily, I was seriously the one, I had a suitcase, I got to go to the Cannes Film Festival when I was 24, a few different times. And again, not knowing anything about the industry, I look back now and like, it's kind of a wasted time because it was very sad that I was too young to really appreciate it at that time. Because every year I would go, I never wanted to go back because it was 3 weeks of working your ass off, partying all night, waking up. I did this twice during one of the trips. I wore my shirt not only inside out, but backwards. Because I was in the office at 5 a.m. and then the parties wouldn't stop until about 4. So anyways, I was the one who collected the money. So I had all of the checks in my little briefcase, because in the 80s I wore the briefcase, and I did all the contracts. And I would say yes to everything because I didn't know how to negotiate and I was not a lawyer. But that was how I learned all about the business side of the industry. And I thought that was actually kind of cool.
It really is amazing, having been in Hollywood for 12 years too. Number of people who randomly just end up there wanting to do a thing, but not knowing what.
Yeah.
And you simply learn by doing. You get thrown into it in the deep end, and either you figure it out along the way or you don't survive in LA for very long.
Absolutely. And I think that's the why I like the industry, because I left for a little while going, you know what, this is a weird thing for me to do. Left it, and then was really sad because everybody within the industry was very passionate about it. They were very young and it was always changing. And I love that about it. And so I was fortunate enough, I got a few more roles, and then I landed at 20th Century Fox doing television distribution. And parlayed that into an 18-year career. And the last of it, I was lucky enough to launch their enterprise operations department. And then I got to make 2 different departments off of that. So we took a very large studio and we collapsed all those separate film, home video, because every single pod was making their own one sheets and marketing materials and spending all this money. And so we got to collapse everything. And then I got to take them and make little departments off of that. So I got to be very creative on the business side of it. So it's not very fun, but it's what I got to do is make sure that the films got sold or any of the materials and the money. One of the things that I thought was interesting, the role I got to play, I was not the lawyer. I pissed off a whole bunch of lawyers because I didn't have a law degree. I was not a marketing person. Yeah, I was not. It's funny because nobody knows what that is. Business affairs. What the hell? Exactly. Like what?
Yeah.
Because you don't have a law
minor.
degree. See, I didn't have anything, and that really upsets people who come in.
But I know more than half of them, so.
And you stay in it, and I think this is.
I'd be some lawyers all day.
Okay, yeah, and I that's what I liked about it. And so if you waited for the lawyers, you never sell anything.
Yeah.
No, and if you let the salespeople sell it, they'd sell their mother. So ours was like, I gotta create the systems, gotta create, they can't do anything, you know? So we merged legal and sales together is what we did, the rights and the distribution rights and everything. So it's boring, my side, but there are some stories, and so.
Once when I was working at a record label, one day one person quit and instantly I was appointed to accounting and HR, having never done either in my entire life, but congratulations, you're now an accountant and human resources manager because there's no one else to step into to do the role. That just, it happens in LA.
Well, and it happens more in small production companies too. At Fox, when I went there, because I came from a small production company, so I was real wide, all media, perpetuate, everything. And then I went to Fox, and at the very beginning, I was international. And it wasn't domestic, so I'm international and I was television. And I'm like, what about all the other media before it? And they're like, don't worry about it. I'm like, of course you have to worry about it because it affects it. And that was absolutely, so 10 years, it took me 10 years, but that's when that first moment when they weren't thinking that it does affect everything down the line. And I just happened to be the last person. Oh, it was, yes, she knows. We cleaned it our own house, yeah. Jaguar.
I managed a 1,000-film library on a server by myself. It was forensic.
She knows, see, just you guys interview her. So, yeah, that's exactly it. So it's funny because Fox was just too big. So it was always like just in a box, but I got out of that box at the end and it was very fun and exciting. So,
Yeah. Great. So 20th Century Fox. I was part of the Fox family for a little while too, because I was one of the original employees of MySpace. And then Fox bought us at a certain point, which was a really fun day for stock options. But then Fox threw us in the crapper, and now MySpace is the butt of every joke.
Were you at the huge party we did at the Friars Club though?
Oh,
Oh God, we had a huge party.
Yeah.
It was like right after the next year, gone.
Yeah.
It was crickets.
Best
I was
party.
Yeah, I ran
I
ran MySpace's record label for about a year and a half.
Yeah.
So
Oh.
it was a fun ride. We went from 20 employees to 800 in like a year's time. But and then it completely died off within like a month. Yeah.
Like video killed radio.
I'm so sorry. I don't even mean to I don't even mean this as a joke, but like when I walked in, the first thing I was hearing was talking about parties. Sorry, I wasn't able to fully hear your full introduction. I'm sorry. But was there
Parties are a part of the industry, but the thing is, what people don't realize about Hollywood, and sorry to kind of interject on this, what people don't realize about Hollywood is that parties are actually work.
Yeah, they're networking
Like
opportunities.
you're there for as a representative, and you may be out until 1, 2, 3 in the morning, but be there, bright and early the next day, but still you're there at a party because you are required to as part of work.
Wow.
Oh, yeah.
And it happens a lot. It's sort of what wash, rinse, repeat.
I just took about 3 to 5 hours.
Yeah.
So.
The-
I was going to say, that's why you have to be in the industry young.
Yeah.
I need to.
One of the,
Right for me.
I'm still doing.
I mean, it's fun, but you have to learn to adapt to a loss of sleep and just accept that, and live and deal with. I think that's why, honestly, a lot of people leave Hollywood and still want to be involved in the industry somewhat, but go to a place like Klamath, where it's a little bit slower lifestyle. You can actually afford a house. You can slow down a little bit, but still kind of do things. Yeah.
I don't think it gets out of
Yeah.
system. I'm like, I work about long right now and I'm not in the industry, but
Yeah.
I think that's who they attract.
Crazy people?
Yes.
And then you were at Fox mostly all the way up until it was acquired by Disney.
Yes.
Was the Disney acquisition the reason why you left?
No.
Well, yes and no.
Okay.
I'm like, absolutely. I was a year before, about 6 months, I was being promoted. So I was going to be senior vice president, enterprise operations, and that's all going well. And then they had, and this was really weird because I was too removed from Rupert Murdoch. And I didn't even realize that. My sister actually had somebody, she does product placement. So she was in with a product placement person. And they looked me up and she's like, holy shit, your sister is like too removed from Rupert. And I didn't even know that. But so my career was going very well and they were having a retire, they put out an announcement and it was what do they call it? It was a retirement. You could elect to retire, basically. It was kind of a push up. And they wanted like a 50% buy-in. And nobody knew this was, and it was interesting because about a year and a half before Disney. So I'm sure they really, yeah. So I think 70% of the people took the retirement. It was a volunteer retirement thing. They did not give it to me. because I was too valuable of an employee. And then within 8 months, I was let go. Well, it went a little bit more into that,
Right.
but there was you can read it in the trades. I ended up in the trades, which was good and bad.
What does that mean?
It means there was a lawsuit involved.
It was-
Oh,
What it
okay.
means. Yeah.
I would have liked to have been in the trades for some other reason. But for, let's say, 25 years or 24 years, it was really fun. The last year was not fun. And there was again, it's all in the newspaper and everything. I can't talk too much about it.
Right.
But it was not a good exit and it was not fun. And my family here, they were having health issues. My aunt had just died of cancer. And so my husband and I, it was funny, he was getting promoted to a vice president he's in the industry too, different roles, different things. He was getting promoted and he got out of work within 6 months too. So we both didn't have jobs. We're sitting in LA. We have 2 kids who basically grew up on the studio lot. And we're like, yeah, let's just bring the kids to Klamath and we'll spend 6 months.
A little bit of a different tempo here.
Yeah, and I'm like, we'll help the family. It's been almost 5 years. So it's one of those good, I still can't figure out where I'm going to be. One of the things I did do when I came here, I helped my sister with her product placement company. And so the first one was Hydro Flask.
Yeah.
We needed some coffee. And they weren't wrapped, and it was really interesting. Pardon me?
Go ahead and plug it.
Oh, yeah, no. Well, but it was one of those things I kind of wanted to stay within the industry. And so I was helping her, and she places, if you guys ever need anything for film, like Vitamix, Keurigs, all these clients, which is a great little thing. That basically.
Or is it all just like?
It's actually, the clients pay her. And then she just gets a lot, and all the people just call her for free stuff. So no out of pocket.
Please repeat, would you please repeat?
Okay. Sorry.
Or put the mic a little bit closer.
Okay. So I actually started a company the media brand marketing to do product placement. So films come to her just for free stuff, right? You need a Keurig or a Vitamix or a Hydro Flask. There's no money exchanged. It's just she's giving free stuff to the film, and then she'll get paid on her side. Is how she does it.
There's a couple different kinds of product placement, guys. There's ones where it's paid product placement, where the company will pay you, obviously. It's kind of like, I guess Taylor's doing that, essentially making a whole film, that way. So, but I mean, so there are companies that will pay for that. And then there's the other side of it where when you break down your script and you look at what you need to set dress with and all that kind of thing, you can reach out. And there are product placement companies that represent several different, products, across the board, Coke, Pepsi, whatever you need, beers, alcohols, all different kinds. And then you basically just have a licensing agreement with them to be able to use it in the film for free.
Sometimes.
It's a very interesting.
Clearance.
Bill. I've been on a number of films where, you can't even have a t-shirt on that has what have you, but to have the potential to not only advertise them, but to potentially be paid to advertise them. Yeah, that's a wonderful thing to know. Thank you.
When we did 72, we had the liquor scene in there. I was glad you brought down the crystal, the bottles for it, and we didn't have Jim Beam or something showing. We would have run it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can either reach out to a product placement company to get to be able to use it in there, because it's a clearance thing, so you don't have to pay for it. You just have to get in touch with a product placement company that you can then license it from. Otherwise, you do need to use the fake labels, that sort of thing. I remember we turned what was it? Was it Pellegrino into Cali Gringo? On set one time. But the other
But to know somebody that is in that industry or has connections in that industry is very valuable.
It's clearances can be really, really tricky because especially if it's like an independent project, people may not realize that every label, every brand, you got to get permission to have it appear. In major films, A lot of times it can be very subtle and you don't even realize it. It's just someone like drinking from a cup or something. And sometimes they make it really blatantly obvious where it's like throughout the entire film, you see like Bud Light cans everywhere.
With the logo.
How
always
much did
facing
Bud
the
Light
camera.
pay? You know, like the first Transformers film is a great example of that. There's like 15 or 20 times when Bud Light appears in the first Transformers film. Okay, they obviously paid a lot of money to have that kind of subtle, constant appearance in the film, where their brand alone is constantly showing up.
They're pretty much trying to Pavlov you.
Exactly.
At the beginning of your film
Yeah,
process.
but to know somebody that has this knowledge of this part of the industry is
Even
invaluable.
this person right behind me knows it too.
Well, I just think at the beginning of any script, right, when you have a script and you're gonna make a film, you need to run your title clearance, right?
Yep.
Make sure your title's clear first, your copyright research report and your title clearance. But the next thing you want to do is a script clearance report. And that breaks down your entire script and it tells you, okay, like if you've named a place, a city, a product or anything, it's going to say this needs clearing or this isn't clear. You can use an alternate name. Now, the general rule is you can use certain brands as long as you're using them as intended and you're not showing them as damaged or in a derogatory way. And also if they have not explicitly told you that you can, but you also don't want to do that with like a Disney product or a very high-end product because they will come after you and Disney will shut you down for anything. So don't even dream of showing Mickey anywhere, you know?
There's certain companies that are known for being very aggressive with this. Like,
I'll give you a cease and desist, but
yeah.
they'll also file a lawsuit if you don't pull it down immediately.
We need to have an introduction of the lady in the back as well as the one in the front.
Lisa? No.
Independent filmmaker
Coca-Cola
and
is an-
resources that are available to help us get through these hurdles.
So if you have something, even if it doesn't say Coca-Cola, but it just has that red, like silvery swoosh, Coca-Cola will sue you for everything you have
So
as a trademark violation. There's certain companies that are known for a brand where you don't even have to see the name, but you just see something that looks similar to the logo, and they've invested so heavily in embedding that brand into our brains that if you have something that even looks similar to it, they will still sue for copyright infringement.
So for something like that, but that's just very curious to me. And also, by the way, I'm actually very appreciative of having both of you. Actually, you guys provide a lot of valuable insights, and the business and like the more market business economic side of like filmmaking has always been something that I've been relatively like less interested in. Not to say that there's anything like that I dislike anything there.
Yes.
But it's always very interesting and of course extremely valuable, literally. But for something like that, why would it be seen as a no-no if like a Jim Beam logo or a Coca-Cola or even something like a Nike swoosh would accidentally be put on like the background of like a shot or anything? Wouldn't that just be free publicity?
Well, they don't have control over the use of the logo. Is the issue.
Not only that, but you also have to look at every time that you want to place a product even, and these script clearance companies, even to get into agreement with them, oftentimes depending on what the product is, especially if it's just a direct product, not
Like a physical thing.
A bunch of them, they want to see the script pages. They want a synopsis. They want to know what kind of rating the film is going to have, because if you're making a bloody horror movie or something that their value system is against,
Gotcha.
for their brand or for their company,
They don't want that connotation. That makes sense.
It's also by country too.
Okay.
Like, you'll hit, if you have distribution, worldwide distribution to any of your product, right? There's countries that, like France is one, really hard. They do not want product placement in the films. So
Obvious.
China's an example where they actually force you to change content of your film
Well,
too.
there's a shot in one of the new Marvel movies that China wants taken out. That's the
Yes.
Statue of Liberty,
Mhm.
you know?
Well,
Oh, hey,
I would,
we lost Taylor there. He had to leave, but thank you, Taylor, for being a part of it. Oh, I guess he's already gone.
So for something like that, I did lose my track. Oh,
Bottom line is, I would really like to have an introduction to both of these ladies.
yeah, she's coming with me because she's the true business affairs with the legal.
Oh, okay. The bottom line is, I'm hearing things tonight that I know that were important, but I had never had any kind of channels to make things copacetic and keep myself in the court.
we have, college degrees from LA, from, in film studies. So, I mean, we, not that you learn everything there. In fact, they don't teach post-production in most film schools. I actually ended up teaching distribution at LA Valley College and at CSUN. In my specialty, everybody's like, why are you going back for degrees? I'm like, because I want them, but, and I'm a lifelong student. I still want to be in school, but I actually had to sort of, you point out that it's a huge deficit, because in my view, the first thing that people should learn as a filmmaker is post-production and sales and distribution, because if you don't know how to sell your film, what are you making, and so often, people will go out and make content that they can't do anything with. And that's I think formerly true. I think now you can monetize anything because of TikToks and YouTubes and stuff that didn't exist historically.
Right.
She mentioned artisan, like, we had that huge boom in the 90s. We had brilliant entertainment in the 90s, and we had that great indie movement because we had artisan and think film and October and some of these really great sort of a new line, some of these smaller independent arms, even the studio small independent arms, and that distribution is gone.
Well, and then Fox even had the Searchlight.
Or it's indie sales. So it's a very different environment. That's why not a lot of creative independent films are financed and made anymore.
Yep.
That's why we have studio films and or.
Well, I've worked with a number of film school students, Southern Oregon University, UCLA, Director's School, what have you. But
Oregon Tech.
I've never run into anybody that had the kind of background as far as, rights and trying to keep me out of
Trouble.
yeah.
I do think people forget about it, because it's not, that was the big thing, even within the industry. So you think about like being siloed, theatrical over here, video there. And then you have your artists here that don't talk to distribution here. And like you said, it's completely changed now because of the streaming. So it's not, I'm not shocked that they still don't talk, because I think it's the last thing is really for artists to understand.
Well, they've never seen a delivery schedule.
No.
And-
You have no idea. The requirements.
No, I've run into the same thing where, you have the directing side of the school and you have the acting side of the school, and they don't talk to one another. And it's why?
Yeah.
It makes no sense to me.
A meld of things, if you're in a department, in a production department, or even whatever your discipline is, it doesn't matter if it's editorial or sound or directing or acting or whatever, there's a lot of crossover classes, coursework that you'll have to take, but there is still nothing in post-production. I mean, in terms of post-sales, delivery schedules, that sort of thing, how you end up having to deliver on all of your production documentation. You barely even learn how to do all your production documentation correctly,
This is kind of getting in the greater context of the push-pull of the industry of creativity versus marketability.
Oh,
Because when we think of whether it's music or film or TV or any kind of art that becomes commercialized, there's the artist trying to create the creative product and all the people that are working behind the scenes to make it as marketable as possible, and also covering all of the legal basis.
and that can be a big tension.
Right. So there's all the creatives that are just trying to make the most interesting, compelling song or film or whatever as possible. And then there's all the people that say, wait, you can't do that because ... And we'll go down the whole list of all of the legal issues associated with it until we reach a happy medium.
And that's the whole like fun dichotomy that you can notice with pretty much any kind of art too, of just this like practical versus principle, or like idealism versus pragmatism, where you can have the most like, visionary forward thinking artists who try to do this like the full creative process, but pretty much exactly like you said, that ultimately whatever they do create, no matter how like creative or artistic they want it to be, it's still a product that they need to market and sell to actually, sustain themselves, which is super interesting.
Interesting things we run into a lot of is, in terms of creative these days is, we talk about that post-authentic era where everything is meta now. And so when you talk about meta, you're talking about, we're often making fun of our own industry and we have inside jokes, and a lot of it is illusory to other content, right? Or right out. I mean, now you've got copyright issues all over the place.
Layers and layers and
on like all of the, the YouTubes and So it's a clearance and legal nightmare, and you also have companies that are specifically just there to go in and pull off your content when, because people illegally upload it and that sort of thing, because then you can't monetize your own content, right? But when you start talking about meta and stuff like that, where people want to put other art into their own work, you're running into a copyright, nightmare, and copyright is 70 years plus death, or death plus 70 years. So there's a lot of issues. It depends on what it is, and the thing is artists don't understand if they want to use somebody else's work, they have to license it from them, and either they're going to agree to it or they're not. In the same way that they're going to license a product, right? Some artists don't want to be associated with anything. Like if you look at Radiohead for a long time, you look at certain bands, there's no way you can deny the song, and there's no way. So
And they want to be like authentic to themselves, but just kind of the harsh reality of that.
For content creators is to be thinking about that all the time.
Right. Having worked in the music industry more than the film side during my time in LA, like late 80s, early 90s was this glorious time for hip hop music, where people were being super creative with sampling of taking all these bits and pieces, and it was like collage, like an audio collage, and taking all these bits and pieces together. And then a whole series of lawsuits happened, and now sampling is essentially a dead art form.
Except
because it takes so long to clear all of the uses of it.
Music is brutal. I mean, brutal. And a lot of times also you got to look at every writer on the song has their own right share. So there could be splits, dating all the way back to when a song was created. It has multiple publishers, multiple rights holders, and all of them get paid. And so even licensing one song, you're looking at usually, and it depends on the usage too. If you're using it for a short period of time in the film, or if you're using it for main and end titles credits, you pay a different fee, but that you can pay anywhere between, low end, if you're licensing or having somebody do it for the song, you might be able to get it for $2-3 grand, all the way up to 50. Depends on what
And each one, so like
each song.
for.
They used to call them needle drops.
I'm just thinking of Glee right now. I'm like, when it came out, every episode, every song, we had a track.
I was my last gig in the industry was as a music supervisor for production libraries. So I was licensing music on a daily basis to 20th Century Fox and to Warner Brothers and everyone else to use in trailers, films, TV shows, down to people making little web videos. And some uses may be $100 or $200, and some were $25,000, $50,000, depending on where it was going.
And this is what I would be tracking in these databases that we were creating, so that if somebody made an episode to clear the music, well, that episode everything was clear, right? Except that little tiny thing, and you can't take it out. So you never can sell that episode in this series again. So we take it completely out of the database, and that's through everything. So it does all tie together.
There's a lot of people behind this.
I have to interject one thing. The framing as a director, I got all 5 of you to sit in much better places, and we can see you all, and it's a much better interaction.
Well, this is a really great discussion, but I want to make sure that people get a chance to ask questions. I know Jarrett, Mary Jane, Lori, Court, Cassie's mic isn't working. Haven't had a chance to chime in yet. So yeah, Court.
Okay, just because of the nature of what we're talking about. I went through music conservatory basically, and okay, so they weren't teaching us anything about the business. They weren't teaching us, our music was not product, right? They're teaching us, art. So it wasn't until I got out into the business, that I got to see that component of it. And I'm trying to compare sort of my experience in the late 70s and early 80s, because I'm old, was that like I worked for, my first scoring gig, I got to work for the small company out in Rancho Palos Verdes, small film company, and they needed to put together a stock library of music. So they didn't go out and, it was the 70s, they didn't go out and license, a ton of stuff. They hired a composer and, write a library of music for them. And I compare that to today. I have a daughter who's a producer, and she's in her 40s or whatever, and all of her contemporaries don't hire any composers for anything. They track everything, And part of the structure of the production and the structure of the budget is, how much we're going to spend on music licensing, for all of this stuff. So I look and say, well, there seems to be an arc that's changed by the demand in the business. I think I could not go back in today and make a living writing stock library music the way I could when my kids were little. Yeah. And I just wonder if, you have any ideas about that.
Nature of the business, it's evolved.
Yeah. When I was at Fox, it's interesting because they wanted one of my favorite people at Fox is in music clearance, an older guy. And if you guys ever wanted him to speak, he has stories of the yin yang. He wanted to just buy all the music for every Fox product. And he kept bringing it up to management over the years. And it was so sad because he would do all the work for everything and he'd get this number. And then they're like, nope, I don't want to. And then you piecemeal it. And, it changed millions and millions and millions of dollars later. And every 5 years, he would present a new number. And I don't think they ever fully cleared anything because it was just too much. But it's like you said, you can't go back, right?
Yeah.
Changes. I don't know what.
I'm curious. I just Googled the human anatomy and tried to look up the part yin yang. I wasn't able to find it.
That's a Merrill word.
I think as well, with the invent of the internet, of course, now even with YouTube, if you make a video and you put the video together, then you try to post it, you get the copyright
Papa will come for you.
And it's really easy for them to now track samples, to track any sort of music that has a copyright that you cannot use. And I think that would make your job easier if you're in that field today, but it makes the job of the artist even more difficult to try to avoid that sort of copyright infringement.
One problem with that has come though is it's all based on an algorithm, and so it's all automated. Multiple times over, since I used to work in music library, I have subscriptions to libraries and I've licensed music for my projects. And when I post them, I'll get copyright strikes when I have a clearance and a license for it. And it's email after email explaining, I have a license to use this. And it's like talking to a computer. I can't ever talk to someone to actually get the strike removed. It takes a really long time for someone to realize, oh, wait, yes, it showed up in the algorithm, but they did actually pay to use it. So even if you paid to use it and you have a license, sometimes it still comes back to bite you.
I would caution, we should do a clearance meeting because but it's very specific and it's very, very lengthy. In terms of clearances in general, it's like stock footage, stock images. There are, you can go on, you can purchase a general, the general use. What I would say is you have to be very, very careful because it's for a limited number of usages. So, and it's not usually for commercial purposes. There's also editorial clearances, meaning that, like, for example, if somebody took a stock shot of us right here, they could give it to you for editorial use, but they could not actually give it to you as a commercial use because they don't have the individual rights from us to allow them to license that photo. So clearances in and of themselves is a totally different, very large animal, but you have to be careful if you're going to use something in a film, in a feature, especially, that you're planning to distribute, globally, that you have a commercial use license, which is usually always the premium upgraded license. And you sometimes even have to go to the legal department and get additional language based on what the distributors want to see for that. So just because you license something for use, be it, sound effects libraries, same thing as music libraries, you have to have your licenses to incorporate those things. That's a little different, but I'm talking about in general, especially stock footage and stock images. You want to be really careful with the types of uses and make sure that you upgrade and get your premiums for commercial use, because you usually always have to if you're going to sell it.
I have acted in a couple 3 films, stock footages, and enjoyed those very much, but I don't remember ever getting anything in the yin yang.
It sounds like you need to compile for a while before that starts to accumulate. Jared, since you just recently finished a film and went through all of the licensing clearance hell, you want to, do you have any PTSD from the experience of doing your feature film?
Not really. Some are still kind of outstanding.
Okay.
Most of the film, the only thing we have is using on a skateboard. There was an image of Sonic the Hedgehog.
Oh no.
So that's the issue we're having.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and that's the other thing I would caution before you put anything in, make sure you get your license, because otherwise you have to take it out. And then if you have to take things out, what are you replacing them with? Because also your features especially will have to make time, minimum times for sales and stuff like that, like it's 85 minutes or whatever it is with the credits. I'd be very curious to still have Taylor on right now, because I'm sure he's been licensing it. Documentaries is almost exclusively licensing.
Yeah, his films are really fascinating too because of the topics he's covered. He's done several films about bands. He did the film about the whole genre of ska music we'll watch next week. Then his next film was The Last Blockbuster, which was all over Netflix last year. Documentary about the last surviving Blockbuster video store in Bend, Oregon. And now, so his films are touching on like pop culture type areas. He also made a film during COVID that falls under this, where when everything was shut down, he decided, what the hell, let's remake Back to the Future Part 2, scene by scene, split it up into 88 chunks and give different film, anyone who wants to claim a scene out of the 88 scenes can take it. And then let's put it all back together. So we made this thing called Project 88, where 1 minute it's stop motion animation, and then next minute it's kids in big wheels redoing, a car chase, and the next minute, So and it's probably the most meta film ever made because it's totally madcap. It's all over the place because you chop a film into 88 pieces and then reassemble it. But that's a creative recreation, and thankfully, the Zemeckis family got past it and gave the thumbs up to it. Said that's a really cool project. But they could have come back and said, cease and desist, how dare you remake our movie Back to the Future Part 2 with your little tribute form.
I think it was far enough away from the original that like the would never confuse it.
I would definitely.
Music that I would say too is in terms of like doing a music documentary like he's done on several projects, is that you're not just getting your music's clear, to the band's clear, but even in the merchandising, the posters and stuff like that, they all have different rights holders. The
music videos and your production company,
so you don't
record
have to,
label.
you have to get clearance from both the band and then also from the people who actually own the rights to the the publishing rights or the merchandising rights or whatever, because they're all different rights.
Yep.
Well, there was a high school in New Jersey when I was living back there, not too far from where I was, and they took the film Aliens and they made it into a stage production.
I think I saw clips of that.
It's absolutely amazing production. When I first heard about, what about copyrights?
Yeah.
Good God. They were in the process of tossing all the sets up and their costumes, which they made from scratch. They had next to no budget on this thing. When Sigourney Weaver gave it the thumbs up and a couple of other, and they all had to, they literally said they had to run out to the garbage dumpsters and drag the stuff back in so they could do another performance in front of these people, and they loved it.
So
But
then
they were walking on a thin wire there.
Yeah, so that there's still the legal matter and there's still the lawyers that can get involved. But when there's a director or the lead that publicly gives the project an approval, that gives a lot of leeway in the process on the back end to then clear stuff. They still have to go through the process. But if someone with a lot of clout associated with the project says, I love the idea, that kind of opens the floodgates and allows you to move forward. And that tells all the lawyers, okay, let's make this work, not let's shut it down.
So you guys are just, the discussion is giving me a lot of questions that I like, they're just building up. But I guess just one specifically regarding this is, I guess more of an abstract question just related to this direct topic, but would a medium change? So like in this case, Alien being a film converted into a stage play, would that on its face not immediately change, like cross the boundary of being transformative enough?
So it's still a derivative work.
Right. There's a lot of radio shows that have been made based on films. There was a company out of Australia, I can't think of the name of it, but they were deliberately, and they had the rights to do this, I guess, and made the rights. They went back and they made a lot of classic movies into radio plays and shows.
And
they're strikingly well done.
And those were able to be considered transformative enough to avoid copyright. Fair enough. And then there is no clear cut, because I learned a little bit about like at the tail end of my degree, I studied, actually, I'm an alum of Oregon Tech. I got my degree in communication studies. And at the end of it, I did a class on communication and law. And I learned about copyright. And it was really interesting of how of these four main dimensions, the one that interested me the most was like transformity, because to me, at least, art has always been something where like the expression that I've heard is like good artists borrow, great artists steal, which is kind of like a fun, like just a fun expression that I've heard. And then I've thought about it a bit more, but it's always interesting to me on how, like, yeah, artists can steal and take things, but unless they are extremely careful, there's no line in the sand. It's a very granular gray area that it's kind of dependent on various situations, or at least to me, it feels like. Oh, gotcha.
And it gets worse.
Oh, gotcha.
Copyright law.
Oh, okay.
And but more important than that, read through the case.
Fair enough.
Decisions.
Like
because then you'll understand better what the reasonings are. And how many points, I mean, you have to at least hit 5 and 9, I mean, like, you know, it has to be substantially, get substantially, right? Reasonable, foreseeable.
And then,
right?
and then that's what's interesting to me, because there are those really clear cut, like legal precedents that I'm bullet points, and I'm just going into the nitty gritty of that. What would count as substantial?
Well, that's where you, again, I would just refer you to a copyright.
Fair enough, yeah.
It lists.
Well, yeah, it's going to depend.
And then you can go point by point, because that's what you would do. You go, okay, so how close is my plot, my characters, my this, my that. But anyway, they list out the points of which there has to be a substantial.
And
fair enough.
Substantial similarity is what they're looking for.
When you're getting the public domain stuff that has gone, you know, hey, this is public domain, I can do anything I want with it.
Double
You
check.
still gotta double check.
Yeah,
Yep.
100%.
I mentioned to Kurt when I first came in, I rewrote War of the Worlds for stage production, Reader's Theater. And we did it once here in Klamath Falls. I'm hoping to do it again next season at the Linkville. But I had to do a lot of research on that because there was an extension on the H.G. Wells family. And 12 years ago, it had finally expired and completely fell into public domain. But you've got to do your research.
And they would not at Fox ever put anything. They would never mention public domain for any of the films. Like kind of, there was a list that was very hard to get to.
We're still got some stuff.
On your note, Bowen, if you come to the next music trivia that we're doing in this room, I have an entire category called "Did They Sue?" Where I'll play the original song, then the blatant ripoff, and then you get a bonus point of saying yes or no over whether there was a lawsuit from it.
It would be yes.
You'd be surprised the ones that were no's.
That would be good practice.
So yeah, to hear just how blatant the ripoff was and did they sue or not. That you'd be amazed the stuff that does get sued over and the things that they let go sometimes is really mind-boggling. But there's a whole history of Hollywood there.
And then, sorry, I don't mean to hog much time. I just, one other question before I'll like put myself on the back burner again is kind of a question that since you guys seem to have a lot of really interesting opinions just on like film in general, something that you brought up regarding like the differences between like, you know, authenticity versus meta. Definitely something that I've noticed too, that in the last couple of years, things have become more and more self-referential, or things that are just calling on either nostalgia or themes or things that are calling back to something in one form or another, whether it's something as from like an aesthetic of like War or Thor Love and Thunder and like Thor Ragnarok going back to like 80s aesthetics, you know, because the filmmakers, that's the type of things they love, or even all the way up to Disney creating like, you know, rehashing remakes and quote unquote live action to mixed amounts of success. For something in that regard, do you guys think that at some point in the near future, we will reach a tipping point of self-reference and it will no longer become like lucrative, and then we'll see sort of like a new age in originality?
So
or
like Disney would sue Disney over Disney intellectual property.
Or I
He wants them to end, right?
I just mean even something like it gets to the point that like the public or just people in general will stop caring about calling back to that.
Money, they're going to continue down whatever path is easiest. And I think, you know, it's
Yeah.
easy to pull things that there's a success.
Well, they don't have to pay for
Money.
it either if they own it in the library, right? So it's like, let me take that thing from 30 years ago and we'll just remake it because we have rights to it. And we don't have to pay a writer. We don't have
It's-
to do a new thing.
and
Well,
It's
they do.
very, it is leveraged
Unless-
nostalgia.
Unless the public stops watching it, they will continue. to do
Court
it.
Court has to jet. Thank you, Court, for being here. Appreciate the time.
Yeah. See you, everybody. Great
See you.
discussion.
Okay, Jeff. I think the answer to that, Bruce Springsteen actually did a really great keynote speech. And it was about this post-authentic art world that we live in, and you can Google it, and it's a fabulous speech that he did. But I think, look, film's been around since 1895, and there's only so many original ideas that you have. You can only read so many books or come up with so many original ideas because there's a universal human experience, you know what I mean? And so there's only so many different ways in which to tell these stories. So that's why we consider so much post-authentic. That's why there's so much meta thrown in, because especially due to pop culture and our deep entrenchment in it, we want to recall our favorite songs that we know is going to resonate with other people, or our favorite, shows from and that's the thing. So how do you change something up? How do you make it authentic in a world that has created everything?
And we're not,
So
so
that was kind of the point of his speech, is what is authentic, what is not.
and we're not so much looking for the new anymore.
But that's not true.
Yeah.
No?
I disagree with that. I think we
Okay.
are constantly looking for the new, and I think that's why when something new and interesting comes out, where you see people doing, 7-10 years worth of on a project to make it their own.
Like Frankincense.
Yeah, of course.
Soul crushing, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, there is still a way to do it. It's just that, the studio system, like I said,
It's still the most lucrative option.
Well, it's also easy. Like she said, it's easy. You got rid of all the competition.
But
You got
also
rid of
have-
all this,
You also
like,
have MBAs making decisions based on algorithms.
Yeah.
You don't have creative people
No.
behind what's driving the content. So you're always going to get that out of the studio system. And that's what we always have had out of the studio system.
Yeah.
So it's always been up to the independents. The big difference is we don't have the same distribution for it, therefore not the same backing and the same money for it. So it's just harder to make it, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
About relating stories. Warhol Studios did this Seven Samurai. Do you know what that evolved into in America, in the Americas?
Western?
Western,
Yeah.
The Magnificent Seven.
Yeah.
Same story.
Yeah. Star Wars is basically a retelling of a classic Japanese film as well.
Isn't like any sort of so many stories, like adventure stories or like young adult adventure stories or anything, even like fantasy, they all are based off of things like Journey to the West, which was made like.
It's funny, we have this whole discussion about authenticity. And there's a gentleman in Eugene that I would guess has some kind of direction, some kind of genes from Africa. And there was Court, another gentleman, a black gentleman. And I've got about, I don't know, a minuscule amount of genes from Africa. But due to the lighting, I'm the darkest person in the room. There's when it comes to filmmaking, you can make pretty much anything. And it's like Robert Downey Jr. played a black fella in a movie once.
And Tropic Thunder.
Yeah, it was very successful. But it's all imagination. It's all
Watermelon Man.
yeah.
As a black actor, he started out as a white man and he turns black in the middle of the film. It's a dark comedy. But
Yeah.
Well, there's some that haven't aged well in that respect too. Denise and I were talking about our like Soul Man with Howie Mandel. The one I always go back to that makes me cringe every time is Breakfast at Tiffany's with Mickey Rooney's character. John Wayne once played Genghis Khan. I mean, there's a
But
deep
he was an
history,
incredibly
misappropriation of cultures in Hollywood that goes way, way, way back.
Hollywood's always been very racist. From very early on, but very eras. I mean, look at the newsreels they had in the 40s.
Oh, yeah.
And then there's the films like I just mentioned, Andy Warhol off the cuff. One of his films was an 8-hour-long film, a static shot of the Empire State Building, and all you see is the sun slowly going over 8 hours.
Time lapse
The
before time.
highlight, no, it wasn't time lapse, it was full 8 hours. The only highlight of it is about 2/3 of the way through the film, suddenly a shadow of an airplane goes across the screen. Whoa, action. But that was an art film.
Yeah.
So I know we've done kind of a deep dive into the legal side of the industry, but Mary Jane and Cassidy haven't had a chance to chime in. Looks like we lost Lori. Mary Jane, did you have a question, or Cassidy, you could type a question into the chat? I don't want to leave people out. We're having a really interesting conversation, but I know this is also really deep into how the industry works. I want to make sure it's still compelling for people involved. So Mary Jane, did you have something that you want to chime in with, or just kind of trying to keep up with the conversation? No. Cassidy, is there something that you would want to maybe ask in the chat? I want to make sure that you get time to participate as well. So. Yeah. Or while we're waiting for that, Jared, did you have anything else that you wanted to chime in with?
Not really, but very interesting conversation. It's Hollywood, from my experience, has been of course, a roller coaster ride, and from the studio side of it, and I know that you two ladies have probably seen many different productions and productions that didn't quite make it to development or release over the years, and that's the thing that I don't think a lot of people discuss in Hollywood, are all the failed attempts. Those things that seem like they're on their way, they're on a fast track. Actors are attached, directors are attached, but for one reason or another, they falter. And if you know anything like that, I'd love to hear about those stories, or one of the stories.
I think the funniest, well, not funniest, the film that saved Fox was Sound of Music, and they put that on the shelf. And it was the studios going under, and there's this great history of 20th Century Fox, but they pulled it out because that was the last bit of money that they had, and it was already completed on the shelf, and that's what saved it. So there's a lot of films. I mean, when I started Fox, was the Tiger?
Tony?
No, on the boat. It's
It has a human name.
You're talking about the
Life of Pi?
Life of Pi, thank you.
Yeah.
That one, I was doing clearance on it when I first went to Fox. And I went to Fox in 1999. So when did that get released? About 10 years later. So, if it's amazing things that do go through the pipe and get made, and you're like, how and why? And you look at some of these television shows, and that was one thing I had to do at Fox. I had to watch every single series and May screenings, and it sounds like fun again. And then 2 weeks later, and you're watching another episode, and it's like, can we watch anymore? Oh my God. And then you pick the ones you like, and they're not the ones that are seen in the fall. So, and those are the ones that got made. Which is
music working at major record labels all the time. My favorite artists are the ones that bombed or their album never got released, because the great thing, what you're describing, the best and worst part of working in the entertainment industry in Hollywood is that you get to hear or see everything.
Which means you get to hear and see.
But you have to hear or see everything. And not only the stuff that you really love isn't the stuff that gets the big marketing push. And so it doesn't become the hit. It's not a matter. I mean, sometimes it is, because the project is just so unique and compelling that it rises to the top. But most of the time, it's not the most compelling, interesting projects that get all of the attention. It's the ones that get the most money pushed behind them because they think it's the most commercial, marketable thing.
It's also culture from above, culture from below, right? Like, they want to dictate what they want culture to be, okay? Like, they want to promote their own people for whatever agendas that might be, sometimes nepotism. But then you have your culture from below, where something you're going to take, like grunge music, okay, that started out in people's garages, and we're in like these little tiny clubs going back to music and looking at, the 90s and the Seattle and Portland movement up there. they couldn't ignore it because it got too big, so then they had to take, and then, once something like that takes over, then you have a whole new thing. So when you're talking about authenticity and is that going to phase out and is something new going to take its place? It always does. It's circular, it's just, it's a cycle of those things happening. But it takes some underground culture coming up and becoming so big that the industry will take it.
It takes the grit.
But I mean, if you talk about development hell, though, specifically in terms of film, like you can go all the way back to Eric von Stroheim's Greed. Okay, where they took a 10-12 hour film that a handful of people saw, like journalists and critics and stuff like that, or people from the studio, and they said, oh my gosh, it's the most brilliant thing we've ever seen. It was the first, outside of the studio films they ever shot on location, that sort of thing. And by the time the producers were done with it, they sold the rest of the film for the silver retention of the film. And and what you got out of that was an hour and a half movie that would have been a trilogy today. You know what I mean? And one of the greatest movies probably.
Yes.
So when you look at something like that happening even back then, but then, look, I brought a film here that we had to do a reshoot on. We shot actually in Texas that I reshot here I doubled part of Oregon for West Texas and certain stuff. So, and we reshot it here. And then the producers got in a Christmas contest. They couldn't decide on, who wanted this and who wanted that. And so that thing never did get released. And then they came back to me. I mean, we did that in 2009. They came back to me a few years ago trying to put on the streamers now, and I said, look, I don't want another thing to do with that film, but I production managed that thing up here, and it happens, and you don't know if it happens. That's usually not a development hell. That's a post hell,
Right.
But if developmentally, you also have to look at things like, someone will option something. A bunch of, the person who options it will put money into it. So even if you do get it back, there's like a buyback almost, like, you know what I mean? Like, so you have to look at people who want the money that they invested in. So there's going to be a discount that you're going to have to agree on, that you're going to have to end up paying them before you can even resell that project. And so sometimes there's so many tie-ups that people don't want to touch it, because they can just pay for something else that doesn't have that problem.
Years ago, AMC, before they became modern AMC and actually showed old films, did a weekend of all silent era, and they ended it with a showing of the uncut Greed, which
We're not, it doesn't even exist.
well, no, it was like a 6-hour version.
No,
Well, like yeah. So it was like a 6-hour long film. So it was like an entire afternoon and evening to watch it. But I remember I taped it on VHS because I was like, I'm never going to be able to see this again. And it was absolutely incredible to catch that. And I'm a fan of silent film anyway, but to see a film of that scope shot way back then of this monstrous epic is
170-degree heat. They had people passing out outside. I mean, this is even earlier.
I've never heard of this film.
I can interject for just a moment. The young lady in the back there that said something about living in West Texas. I'm a Texan.
Shot a film there. Yeah, we shot a film there. Actually, we shot it in New Mexico, but it was it was called a West Texas children's story at the time.
So you have not been a resident of Texas.
Oh, good God, no.
except maybe Austin.
You're not gonna,
It's the best thing in the rearview mirror for me.
Well, there was a Fox film that has a really compelling backstory in that the script was written in the 90s and it got passed around Hollywood for years, and everyone said it's the most brilliant script I've ever read, but it will never, ever, ever be made. And it was done by Mike Judge, the guy who did Beavis and Butthead. It's my all-time favorite film, Idiocracy. Now, the interesting thing about Idiocracy is that it was a Fox-made film, and it blatantly makes fun of Fox throughout the entire film. Somehow, Fox made it, and then they killed their own project because contractually they had to make it. I'm sure you can speak to the whole back end on that, but they killed it on release. Where they only put it in like 20 theaters nationwide. But the film was so funny, and so even though it's a dumb comedy on the surface, but underlying it's this brilliant social commentary. Yeah, and through DVD sales and word of mouth, it became this giant cult classic. But that's a film that Fox had to make under contract and then tried to kill. So that's the kind of thing that can happen. Is it's like floating for? Were you involved in that one at all?
Not in that one. No.
My question,
But you know of the whole back end of that.
my question for that would be, why did they try to kill it?
Well, now that goes back to the other thing where studios will also often find out that one studio is making a project on so-and-so's life or some story, and they want to make a similar one.
Yep.
And so they'll buy the other script and shelve it just so it can't be made.
Yep.
So there's a lot of stuff happening.
Or,
like that.
or sometimes we end up with two films of basically the same subject come out the same year. There were two films on Steve Prefontaine's life that were shot at the same time and released at the same time. There was one year where we had Armageddon and Deep Impact come out the exact same time. And that's usually a bidding war going on amongst the studios over a script. And when one wins, the other says, screw it, we'll make the film anyway.
Would that be something like, just an example I can think of is like Despicable Me and Megamind?
Different stories.
Me?
Well, and animation takes so long to develop, it would be years in the making. But for when we get
But for
two
its
films kind
scripts
of
that
back to
we
back that are
study.
really similar, oftentimes what's happening is one person had a script that they shopped around, there's a bidding war over it, it got bought. The studio that has sour grapes over finishing second in the bidding war is like, it was an idea, screw it, let's make our own script and basically tell the same
It
story.
happens a lot with like biopics and true story.
Okay.
Like that, you know.
I think also, you know, the time it takes to make a film, from pre-production to post-production, it could be 2-3 years sometimes, and society changes, right? Mores, norms, all of that changes. So the film that you made that, you know, was pretty crude or misogynistic or what have you, you know, 2-3 years ago, people may not have paid attention to it, but now people would pay attention to it, and you'd be basically canned before you even opened.
Yeah.
You hit on something there. Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space. It bombed something fierce when it came out. Now it's considered a classic.
Yeah,
You know, and
happens too.
the odd thing is if you put aside the bad acting, the bad sets, the bad special effects, the story is really kind of interesting. And I'm just like somebody had a big, let's remake this, but let's make it good. You know.
Right. And also, like the film Speed, that's a big story of years ago. That film was brought in by a certain producer at executive at a studio. They're excited. It was on a fast track, and then that executive was fired. And then it sat for 10 years for a new executive. After that, the one that replaced the first one found it and said, hey, this is a great film, before they were going to release the rights.
I
So
would say that's more the normal than the exception.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty much every day. I mean, there's stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks and stacks of scripts sitting in offices that, you know, and what they choose to greenlight out of those, you know, 5,000 scripts that are sitting on their desk is 4 a year, you know.
I know.
Right.
I submitted a film, and it made it all the way to Spielberg's secretary, and she squashed it.
What you're also talking about there is common protocol that happens in the industry. Anyone who's been in the industry for any amount of time knows the game of musical chairs that happens. Whenever an executive gets let go, the new person comes in and brings in their people. And suddenly there's just like a Black Tuesday where everyone is suddenly let go at no fault of their own. I've been a victim of that. I'm sure you've been a victim of that, where there's just changeover at no fault. It's just the industry where kind of the music stops, everyone rotates chairs, and the goal is to stay in Hollywood long enough to where you can still find a chair when everyone rotates, and eventually there may not be a chair for you and you're the odd one out.
Usually when it's not before the new person comes in, but the chair is gone. Somebody has stolen it.
Right.
In their
Well,
office.
when there's acquisitions, so there's 2 departments. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You gotta merge them,
Yeah.
And the buyer usually gets the pick of who they're keeping and who they're letting go in terms of those merged departments. So
Yeah.
I've watched a lot of companies. In fact, one of the jobs that I had was to put together. There was a guy who bought distressed film libraries and assets for companies that had gone under, even that had film libraries. So Intermedia, Think Film, Comerica Bank, even the assets that they held, stuff like that. So I ended up having to put together, you know, and go into warehouses and pull out tapes and documents that could complete a delivery schedule so we could do new sales on these libraries for over 1,000 films. So I spent a lot of time in dark warehouses.
Yeah.
Very dirty. But yeah, I mean, what happens to films? What happens to their lives? And it really depends. Like, because back then, people didn't take the best care when things got sold. They got put into storage, and if it wasn't climate controlled storage, your film or your tape, whatever it was on, was ruined. So there's some films that we'll never see again because they're not salvageable, or they have to go through a very massive restoration process. And it's not just the film itself, but it's all the rights and marketing, you know, they can always do new marketing and stuff, but there's a lot of things sitting in boxes that then, when they even consolidated storage facilities, because there were specific film storage places like your Iron Mountains and your pack titles and your film bonds and that sort of thing, and they've gone out, and so then they got pushed to other areas and pushed to other areas, and eventually if they couldn't get a hold of producers, they just threw the elements out.
Yeah.
So there's some things we'll never see again.
There's a famous Russian film, silent film, from about, I guess about 1918, right after the revolution, called Elita. It was big at the time, but it got put away, and it wasn't until the West discovered it and just barely managed to save it. The film is amazing. It's all done in the Cubist style.
Yeah.
You know, and it's whoa, it's incredible.
I lived in North Hollywood, right by the Warner Brothers lot for a time, and there was a day when I was there that the vault where they saved all of their films caught fire, and you could smell and see basically film history going up in smoke right in front of you while they were trying to put out the fire. But all the old film, especially if it was still on like silver nitrate, that stuff is so flammable. Just oxygen alone could potentially ignite it.
Now, the only good side to that is that a lot of, there are big, long time distributors in the worldwide global market. And if you were lucky enough, you had an IP or an IN sitting in an old lab. Unfortunately, film labs are now gone, so you don't anymore. But you used to be able to find an old IP or an IM where you could run additional prints or telescan back in the day, where you could then, you know, restore. I know. That was like,
Yeah, and then there's also the one redeeming element of when we think about all these films that have been lost is every now and then we hear about something that was found in a private collection. Like there's randomly a silent film that was found in Belgium, and it's a copy of this thing that was thought to be lost for 80 years. I mean, that happens still to this day.
Whenever, and
yeah, but it was something very recent. Who was it? God, I can't even think of it right now, but it was literally, they just announced it on the.
it's when all these studios collapsed too, when they were buying everybody's library. Because I do remember the first job, and I'm in the basement filing, trying to find, and I went through the whole entire file cabinets and everything, and then there was a folder in this film, and everything was lost because of the earthquake.
Oh.
So there's all various reasons why films are gone.
I worked for the Osmonds for a while, and I had to go through all the Osmond archives, and I was finding all kinds of stuff that they thought was lost, you know, and or damaged. And I remember in my office, I had pictures of every one of the boys and Marie from like little kids all the way up to their current age on rows. So I go, that's so and so. This is drove me nuts. But I was finding stuff they thought was long.
Yeah.
I think it's too, you have to know what you're looking for.
Yeah. A lot of museums and a lot of Hollywood warehouses are really, truly, honestly, like the closing scene of Raiders of the Lost Ark, where there's all these treasures just there, boxed up, and no one has a clue of what's actually there. It's been lost over time at some point.
I'll back him up because I'm on the advisory board here at the Klamath County Museum, and there's stuff in the back that every now and then, did you know that we had this? We didn't know we had this.
Yeah, it got mislabeled, or they didn't know who dropped it off, and it's just, yeah.
And I could imagine some of the most valuable stuff are outtakes. You know, Marilyn Monroe or whoever, you know, the old actors, and outtakes and flubs and all those other things would be a lot of fun to see today.
Yeah.
You see so much stuff, like if you could imagine maybe 30 or 40 years ago having you know, being part of the storage wars. Buying storage lockers in LA and just going in and see what's in them.
Well, there's a famous Harryhausen film called Earth versus the Flying Saucers. I'm sure we've all seen it. You know, the alien space suits with these weird big domes and stuff. If those were still around today, they'd be worth a fortune. They tossed them in the trash. I have a photograph of them at home sitting in trash cans.
I have to say, Halloween, I never dress up. I'm horrible. I did dress up one year because my husband worked at Fox too. And he went down to the costumer, you know, as a friend. And I got the alien hat and the tail. And that is the one and only costume I wore for Halloween. And it couldn't fit in the car. So we put the tail outside on the side. And it was for my husband, but he couldn't fit into it. So he had to wear something stupid. Yep. And I got to be the alien. And so.
Well, we have just a couple of minutes left. And so I always like to end these giving people a last word if they have a final really quick question or anything that they want to say in their goodbyes. And Mary Jane hasn't had a chance to talk yet. Mary Jane, are you still with us? Give it a second.
Until Mary Jane pops in.
Okay.
There's a, I
That's Cassidy.
have what could well be an outtake for Saturday's shot. And I would encourage you to, if not have an outtake for Saturday's shot, to think of something that could be added for the end of the flick after the credits, that sort of thing.
Outtakes is in like a blooper, or just outtake is in?
So sometimes honestly, sometimes the best part of a bad movie is the blooper reel during the end credits.
Yeah, bloopers are, we laughed our butts off for the best part of 10
You're right, yin yangs.
Yeah, we laughed our butts off for best
So
half hour. Stop.
Okay.
We laughed our butts off for the best part of 10 and a half hours on our rehearsal, blocking, what have you. I know there's one thing that I definitely want to contribute to an outtake, and who knows, God only knows what'll happen when we're on camera. But anyhow.
So would that mean that like I should make an effort to potentially like kind of like orchestrate me making a mistake of some kind, as long as it's funny, or
No,
just
not orchestrate a mistake, but just be funny.
okay?
Off camera, off script. You had said a lot of things the other day that were very funny.
Wayne and I were working on a film once, and outside there was these guys with motorcycles, and we're going, oh crud, we had to wait for them to move out. And just as we start the film, what happens? But the marching band from KU comes walking.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that was an interesting shoot, wasn't it? Yeah. The motorcycle parade coming by, and then
the F-15s are taking off as soon as they're done, right?
Can we have anything else go wrong to our sound? Yeah.
But I appreciate you telling me that, Wayne. That kind of makes me feel more comfortable with it. And I was kind of already planning on being a little bit like having fun on set. Nonetheless, I mean, I have so much fun anyways. But just from there, that gives me the confidence of let my hair down a little bit, if that makes sense.
Definitely use what God gave you, buddy.
Jared, do you have any final words for us?
No, just thank you too for sharing. It's great to hear. I mean, I kind of was familiar with that side of the business a little bit because I used to work in a company that worked, we did magazines, right? And with magazines, it's the same sort of thing. You have to get the rights if you quote someone or if you use a story that was in another publication and what have you. So I totally get that, but film's a little tougher because you've got thousands of people creating this and not thinking of the ramifications of if they use a Disney character or reference to a Disney character, what have you. So thank you for sharing.
Well, thank you for joining us, Jared. Always great to see you, and thank you also for helping to promote Klamath Independent Film Festival. We appreciate every little bit that you can do to help. Bowen, any final thoughts from you, sir?
I do have a question, but before that, I just wanted to say I really appreciate talking to both of you. You guys have so much knowledge just based off. I can tell just based on the way you guys talk and how you answer the questions. It's very valuable for me, who my goal just for my life is that I want to enter the industry at some point or other, or maybe not even enter the industry, but I want to spend my life as an actor. And it's always fun hearing any perspective regarding the film industry, especially as someone who's also a native to the Klamath area. I was actually in Lost River literally yesterday. But just the whole point, the question that I was curious is that if you guys had any sort of like specific like industry advice, maybe I wouldn't say like ask for one specifically for actors, but just in general, like I'm already pretty well certain that for me to get into it, I need to, one, be really persistent, and two, work my ass off. But outside of things like that. Is there anything that I might not be aware of coming as from a small town kid going into a really big pond? Is there anything that I might not be aware of that would be valuable for me to know going into it?
Be aware that everyone will be cutthroat, and there's make friends, but they may stab you in the back at the
And to be ready
perfect
for that.
moment, and be prepared to be knocked on the ground many times over. It's about how you get back up again, not how many times you get knocked down.
No, yeah, I mean, you really nailed it though. Like, it doesn't matter. And I don't, and you know, people go, oh, do I have to go to Hollywood to be in this? And the answer is no.
No.
Yeah, that's the whole thing is that
Persistence is key. And like you said, you know, filmmakers in Hollywood, especially, it's like the ocean, never turn your back to it. But
And-
it's always take it head on, right?
Yeah, and that's
very
the-
small.
and-
It's very, very small. So if you burn a bridge,
Yeah, you can't,
Yeah.
I mean,
you don't
people,
just burn one.
yeah, people burn bridges all the time.
and then
So surprisingly, for as much money and as big people think Hollywood is, it's a very small and, for lack of a better term, incestuous industry. Everyone knows everyone and has a relationship with everyone. So it's not so much about if you get fired from a place because of circumstances, it may not be your fault. It's, do you then know people who can then get you into your next
yeah,
position?
it's about relationship building.
Well, it also depends on what
Yes.
your goals are and what you're interested in terms of content and that sort of thing. I think the very best way to approach it is to have your authenticity, to go out and make the films that you want to make, that are true to you, that you believe in, find your passion and live that. Don't worry about Hollywood. If you make the right project, they'll come to you.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Don't go there thinking you're going to get in because you're not.
Yeah.
And then embrace, I always embrace the small town. I'm like, whenever, when anybody asks me where I was from, I'm like a small town in Oregon. And then, of course, they name somebody in Portland and they get.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then they were like, well, I was from a small town too. And I always got to say, okay, how many people? And they would say like 40,000. And I'm like, okay.
That's not
In
small.
Maryland, like,
Yeah.
oh,
You always
I
meet
grew up
everyone.
In a town of 600.
Yeah.
And they were shocked. And it just, one of those things that make you real and different. They like people.
So
who are
differentiate.
Yeah. And
Not only that, but embrace, like she was saying, embrace. So, you know, we might be in a small town, but we have a very diverse.
Oh,
group
yeah.
Of talented people.
That's my favorite part
Each
about
other,
it.
You know, networking is no different in any place in the world. And I think it's better to make it outside of Hollywood and then go there than to go there and think, you know, you're gonna do
Yeah.
something.
And the
You'll never
teams
know.
I built at Fox, I always look for the people from the small towns. I'm like, and I told my staff, I'm like, give me, and it was specific. So I'm like, give me the dairy farmer, the kid who was from the dairy farm, and an athlete. And I had a third criteria, I don't remember. And this kid came in and he did not work on a dairy farm, but he grew up in a smaller town and he was a golfer. I'm like, close enough, it's fine.
And Bowen, if I can add one thing, please. If you were to want to build a resume, build some acting experience prior to moving to Hollywood and going to live in a car.
yeah.
Oh, yeah,
It-
of course.
It's a really hard life. And the other thing about,
If I can finish that, what I was saying,
Yeah.
do as much as you can here.
yeah,
Yeah.
Build a resume, build experience. I've been here too long. I've got over about 40 film plays, you know, short students, commercials, what have you, under my belt, and I should have moved, but I'm still here because I'm trying to settle my parents' estate. But in the meantime, I'm acting. And in the year 2020, prior to COVID, I was attached, in the first week of the year, I was attached to 6 projects. The 7th week, it was 7 projects, and they all fell to the wayside. But I shot a trailer that, well, no, you're not attached to that one. I was cast in a trailer with a casting director that absolutely loves my work. He's probably my biggest fan. And that stopped after we shot the trailer. But, you know, I was cast in a supporting role, and he called me back this last week, and he said, I would like you to we want to get this thing going again. And you're going to be in the lead role this time.
Is that the one you said for me, you sent to me, and they're asking for a reel?
No, that's a different one. That's a feature film.
Okay.
The gentleman that his last film was picked up by the independent film arm of Sony Pictures, and it opened in like 130 countries or something. Anyhow, I want you to act as an extra so that you can meet him and he can see your work and think of you and maybe write a role for you just like you've written roles for me.
Well, what
So
Wayne's
anyhow,
saying there is really important is building your chops before you try to jump in head first. The funny thing about Hulk.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
So
sorry.
the bottom line is make connections here, make a resume here, build your talent here while you have a daytime job. And then when you're ready, things are right, move to Hollywood. Okay. I've seen you act. Yes. It was your first gig. You have stuff to learn. We all do. Okay. But nonetheless, right now in 2022, after COVID, just finished one project, got 7 or 8 different projects, 7 different projects I'm attached to, including one Tom could tell you about, and one that I'm really hopeful about. If I get this estate settled and move to wherever to go act as a professional actor, I'm going to kick some ass. I have no doubt about it. Okay. That would be my recommendation to you, is get your chops, get your experience, get things in order, and then jump on it. Okay.
Thank you, Wayne, for that. But it's after 8 o'clock. Thank you, Cassidy, for punching in the note, saying thank you. Appreciate that. Mary Jane, if you're there, say bye. We appreciate you participating, even if we didn't hear from you. And Denise is our guest. I'll give you the final word if there was any final thoughts that you wanted to share.
Very quickly, I did just take over the role as executive director at South Central Oregon Economic Development District. Very strange because I've never worked in economics before. It's similar to Casita, and we're working closely together with them. But basically what we do have is funding for a lot of things coming from federal and state and local. So yeah, I think we might be able to do something. So.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Denise, for being our guest. Thank you, Lisa. We haven't seen you in a while, so wonderful to have you here in person. Thank you to everyone who joined us online. And finally, I want to say as a final reminder, here at Retro Room next Thursday, Taylor will be here where we do a free screening of Pick It Up Ska in the 90s. Friday is Comic-Con at KCC. And Saturday night, we're showing Frankincense. Finally, we're showing Frankincense after years of waiting at Oregon Tech's Auditorium. I have tickets with me, $5 for Klamath Film members, $10 for anyone else. And tickets are available online as well. So if you want to go see this amazing puppet movie, go get your ticket. And with that, thank you everyone for being a part of it. We do this every single month, first Thursday from 6 to 8. And we'll see you next time.
If you guys have any questions on how to get to Oregon Tech at the CU Auditorium, just let me know.
Thank you everyone for being here. Appreciate it.
Have you been to our new building on campus?